two of the three reasons we are talking about Greenland. The first one is that the US-EU trade deal, as far as I can tell, is dead. The EU was planning to drop its industrial tariffs on US exports to 0% later on this week. That's off the table. I think the agreement and the lower 15% tariffs that were reached last year are probably going to revert back to the 20% Liberation Day tariffs. So I think that's an acknowledgement that there's no deal on digital services taxation. There's no deal on agriculture issues that have plagued the two sides for 100 years. There are a lot of issues with the US-EU trade deal that just are not going to be resolved. And this is the president's way of sort of circumventing that. And then finally, as we all await the Supreme Court, it strikes me as plainly obvious that when and if they do strike down the president's IEEPA tariff authority, and the Republican Party and President Trump specifically are materially underwater on their handling of inflation, prices, and the economy with the American voter base, they don't have the ability to keep ratcheting up tariffs through other alternatives. So Greenland is actually an excellent replacement for tariffs because it keeps those EU and UK and other NATO allies incredibly focused on the US, willing to cater to the president's needs and wants, and they don't have to necessarily hit back with tariffs, which the domestic audience in the United States cannot stomach anymore. And those are the biggest reasons I think we're talking about Greenland right now.
Henrietta, how's it playing within the Republican Party these days, or just within Washington, this whole focus on Greenland? It seemed to come out of nowhere, and the president's not letting it go. Are there political ramifications? This is an election year.
You know, I've watched polling data and I've worked on elections from Texas to Rhode Island for 20 years now. I have never seen the American public so unified in opposition to a single item. I don't think this many Americans like ice cream or Disney World. You know, it's something like 83% of Americans oppose this Greenland move. That's a striking amount of unanimity and a pretty clear message to the president.
What does he do with that, though? What does Congress do with that? What does the Republican Party do with that unified opposition to Greenland, to the U.S. taking control of Greenland?
Well, I think it really speaks to the next phase of President Trump's political status in the United States, which is that we're moving into lame duck territory. I think we're already there. So what that means is you're not going to get Congress this year that will advance the president's agenda. That's not abnormal. Very few presidents passed two reconciliation bills. Joe Biden was definitely an outlier in that regard, and he got two bipartisan bills done. I don't think that's an option for this president, you know, in this sort of scorched earth environment. So what presidents do in that scenario is they pivot to foreign policy. And that's what the president has been focused on for many months now, whether it is, you know, Israel, Gaza, or Venezuela, and now Greenland. And that's where lame duck presidents traditionally head to at the end of their term. So I know we have 3 years left of President Trump, but the legislative realities, particularly as we look forward to a midterm election cycle where Democrats are leading in the generic ballot, which is highly predictive of election outcomes, by 5 points on average. So the president is migrating into what is a very normal place for presidents to move into in their last couple of years in office, which is foreign policy.
I seem to have something in the back of my mind. You know, I spent the last week on a beach. How about the government staying open? Where are we on that?
Oh, we got some really good news on that front. The House is moving forward with the 6 remaining bills, even the very contentious Homeland Security package. And I'm very hopeful that they'll be able to clear the rule later on and get that sort of big package of 6 appropriations bills over to the Senate by the time they get back next week, and we can avert a shutdown. So I think we're on the right path with that one.
But there's no resolution on health care, right? Republicans have not come up with a way to make or keep healthcare plans affordable for Americans who do rely on the Obamacare exchanges.
No, there's no solution to the ACA subsidies. And again, I think that goes back to the president having a situation where Congress is not capable of passing legislation. So he pivots to foreign policy in lieu of domestic legislation. So an ACA subsidy extension, you know, my colleague Spencer Pearlman has been on the contrary side of this for many months now, but is still proving accurate. There's just no way to get past the impasse Republicans have on the Hyde Amendment and abortion legislation, the income caps, the applicability of the ACA subsidies. There's just not a path forward at this time. The House has acted on a 3-year extension, but the Senate's not going to pass that bill.
Henrietta, about 30 seconds left. Should we expect any legislation from this Congress in 2026?
I don't think so. My odds of a second reconciliation bill are inordinately low. I'm at 20%, and that's really trying to be generous. I don't see a path forward for material legislation this year. It's going to be keep the lights on. More bailouts for farmers, I think, are obviously coming. We'll get $15 billion added in this latest bill. That brings us to a total of $30 billion for farmers. We're going to try to keep doing that with the highway bill, with the farm bill, and those pieces of sort of must-pass legislation.